everyone. It's Troy Lamel Stovall, the CEO and Executive Director of TEDCO. I want to welcome you again to another edition of TEDCO Talks, and I can't be more excited than I am today with our guest today, Marty Rosendale, who is the leader and one of our tech leaders here and leads the Maryland Tech Council. And I've gotten to know Marty over these last few weeks here. A tremendous leader, a tremendous individual, and just so excited to be able to have a chance to chat with him for a few minutes. So Marty, thanks for being here today.
Troy, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So Marty, just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you kind of got to the Maryland Tech Council.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Troy, first of all, I'm an engineer and a microbiologist by training. My father was a serial entrepreneur in injection molding, and he taught me tool design engineering when I got out of high school. But I used that. My passion was always in biology and microbiology, so I used that skill to put myself through college. Once I got through college, I got into biotechnology, worked for Life Technologies for a while, got into senior management, came up the ranks through the commercial side of business, became the CEO of a couple of biotech companies, two of them here in Maryland. And then I guess it's been about 6 years or so ago now, I decided to start advising other CEOs. And then 2 years ago, the board of the Tech Council asked me if I would be willing to take on the role of CEO of the Maryland Technology Council. And that's what brings me here.
Gotcha. And we appreciate your leadership. Speaking of that time when you were doing that consulting, and the work that you do with TEDCO, we'll cover all of that here. Talk to me about some of that counsel that you gave some of those CEOs and how germane is that in this time that we're in today, battling COVID?
Well, CEO advisory work can take all kinds of forms. Everything from helping CEOs work on M&A transactions, helping them with strategy, sometimes helping them pivot if their original plan doesn't seem to be working out as it was planned to initially. And with respect to now during the pandemic, a lot of the companies that I'm talking to now are dealing with a number of issues. Some of them are very positive, right? Some of them are companies that have become a part of the response to COVID-19, and so the opportunities in front of them are tremendous. And others are less positive. Some companies found that they were attempting to raise capital as the pandemic hit, and investors became much more risk averse at that point. Or their pipeline dried up because all of a sudden their business to business salespeople couldn't make sales calls. Or if they were part of their supply chain came from overseas, they found that all of a sudden their supply chain was interrupted. So there are a number of issues that companies are facing, and we, the Tech Council, are doing everything we can to help the companies get through this.
Talk about some of those things the Tech Council is doing, and you see the role of TEDCO in some of that as well.
Well, yeah, certainly, TEDCO, first of all, is an amazing organization, and it's great to see you at the helm, Troy. I know we've had the opportunity to work together already, which has been tremendous. And as far as our relationship with TEDCO, I think most, if not all, of the TEDCO portfolio companies are members or have been members of the Tech Council. So there's a lot of overlap there. And we work with TEDCO. We provide mentoring services. We provide educational opportunities. A big part of what we do is connecting companies. So we try to connect CEOs and leadership of companies to their peers, to investors, to strategic partners. And we do that in a number of ways. We do that through our events. We do that through direct, one-to-one introductions. So a lot of what we do is help our companies and your companies make those kinds of connections. And then because we're a 501c6 membership organization, we also do a lot of advocacy. So we work with our legislators. And to me, advocacy is a two-way street. So we advocate on behalf of our members to the legislators, but we also bring the legislators' messages back to our members because it's important that they understand what the legislators are dealing with as well.
Absolutely. All great stuff. So, you as we talked, we joked about the first time you and I had a chance to chat, I asked you what the definition was of technology.
Right.
And your answer was, that's a good question. And I want to frame it just a little differently. As we think about, Marty, see if you agree with this point, as we think about what we're going to do after COVID. You know, COVID is changing so many of our societal norms, so many things that we thought were normal are going to get changed, you know, and not whether, forget whether what the vaccine will or will not appear. And so the question really is, how do you see the role of technology helping us as society, and more specifically Maryland economically, traverse this chasm that we're in right now?
Well, in so many ways. I mean, we could spend the whole conversation, the whole time here talking about this one issue. I think, you know, technology is a part of everything that we do today. You know, we all walk around with smartphones in our pockets. We right now we're doing this video cast over our computers. I mean, it's become a part of everyday life. And with the pandemic, it's that process of becoming more technologically oriented has moved faster, right? So now we're all working from home. We're all working remotely. We're all having virtual meetings, and so that process has sped up. It's moving faster. As we come out of this, I think what we're going to find is a lot of this is going to stick. Now, not all of it, you know, so some of it we certainly, you know, we're all dying to get back to the office. We're all dying to see our friends and our colleagues and work closely with people. It's just human nature. We need that social contact. But a lot of this is going to stick. The fact that we've learned that we can work effectively over virtual meetings, so there's likely to be less travel as a result. We'll need less office space because we can have more employees working from home. I think, you know, there's been an amazing improvement in virtual meeting platforms just over the last few months, right? And that's going to make it even easier to continue with this kind of technology. But in addition, you know, there's the cybersecurity aspect of this. So keeping ourselves and our families safe from a cybersecurity perspective. So cybersecurity is going to be an important part of this going forward. And then, you know, with respect to other aspects of technology, here in Maryland, we are developing what may be the world's largest and most fascinating, I guess is a good word, cluster of quantum computing. And that's going to be an amazing development in technology, and certainly a big development for the economy here in Maryland. And then on the life sciences front, we are learning so many lessons right now about how we can develop technologies for therapeutics, for vaccines. We are here in Maryland, we probably have the largest and most sophisticated vaccine development cluster in the country. And that's being proven by the amount of Operation Warp Speed funding that's coming into Maryland to develop the COVID-19 vaccine. But in the process, we're learning how we can collaborate better together, how we can work better together, how we can work with the government agencies to expedite the regulatory process, how we can improve the development process without taking any shortcuts with respect to safety. So so many lessons are being learned during this time that I think are going to stick with us as we go forward.
I couldn't agree more. I think, one of the things I think you and I have talked about is the role that technology is going to play in innovating our way. Like you just talked about, how we're going to innovate our way out of this, and ability to, because if all we're talking about is starting or restarting what was, then we've missed this opportunity to rethink what could be.
Right.
And just like 9/11 changed how we thought about air travel and air security, as you just mentioned, COVID is changing a lot of things, but one of the things it is changing is how we think about the notion of collaboration and meeting and the like. And to me, that's a transition to the work that you and I spent a lot of time on these last month or so. You know, as we think about one of the things that COVID is exposed, right, is the social injustice that has been in our society for more than a minute. And so, why don't you tell folks a little bit about this effort that you've definitely been leading us around diversity and inclusion, and how technology can help with that?
Well, it was an interesting path for me, because when the national dialogue escalated to the point where it is today, over the last 6-7 months, I began to wonder what role does an industry association play in inclusivity, diversity, and equity. And so I started talking with members, board directors, other peers throughout the state, and I found that there were a handful of people that I talked to. I know there's a lot more, but there were a handful of people that I talked to that were very thoughtful, very mission oriented, and had some really good ideas about what could be done. And one of them was that how do we offset the fact that technology has compounded the problem over the years, right? So as technology has grown, access to technology has been a problem, and access to or lack of access to technology has contributed to the technological divide, the social divide, the economic divide. And so how do we turn that around? How do we apply technology and improve the situation? And the example that I like to use, and I know you've heard this example before, but we've been moving towards a cashless society for quite a while now. But the pandemic has moved us in that direction much faster. I don't know about you, Troy, but I haven't reached in my wallet and touched a dollar bill in 9 months.
Exactly right.
Now,
Exactly.
So if you think about that, we're becoming a cashless society. If you're not bankable or you don't have access to technology, you're going to be excluded from the economy. And we just can't have that. That's just not acceptable. And so a group have come together, and certainly when I met you're in that category of thoughtful, mission-oriented. You're right there with this group that we put together. And so now we're coming together and we're looking at how can we apply technology to help resolve this problem. And then, of course, there's been a very interesting fallout, I guess, or side benefit to this discussion, and that has to do with workforce. Mm-hmm. Because we've had a lot of conversations in this state about the fact that our state is very diverse, but our workforce not so much. Mm-hmm. So how do we fix that? How do we make our workforce look like the population of our state? And so as we're working through these issues, and we're talking with the public school systems, we're talking with the universities, how do and of course, my charter is technology and life sciences. So how do we get more young people interested in these types of fields and show them the opportunities ahead of them? And I think that's a really good side benefit of not only the conversation, but the actions that we're taking here.
And what do you see as kind of the end goal? What do you see as, if Marty could kind of crystal ball this, what does that look like for Maryland?
Well, from a diversity and inclusivity perspective, to me, it means that the workforce looks like the state, right? The workforce is as diverse and as the state is. And so that's part of it. But I've felt for a long time throughout my career as a leader that diversity is critical to leadership. And a friend recently said to me, she said, if your inner circle is not diverse, neither is your perspective.
Yep, exactly.
And if you don't have a diverse perspective, you're not going to be competitive in the marketplace. And so part of the outcome here is we need to see our leadership teams show diversity. We need our leaders, our CEOs, our executives need to have input from a diverse inner circle, because it will make them more competitive. And if our companies become more competitive, our leadership teams become more competitive, as a state, we all win.
No, that's great. I love that, Marty. It's nothing I can add or take away from that. But I know you're right. It's creating a diversity of thinking and allowing that diversity of thinking to and it's not just having it available, right? But it's creating a culture that people can feel like they can make those different points of view, and those different points of view are listened to, and not always accepted, but at least listened to and integrated into what the thinking of for that whatever that company is.
Absolutely. Frankly, diversity is meaningless if it isn't accompanied by inclusivity.
Absolutely correct. So, taking on this COVID for a minute, talk to me about how COVID and the response and how we're moving has affected the Tech Council in terms of its operations, in terms of its strategy. What have you had to think differently? When you started the year, you start off 2020, I'm sure, with a plan, and you get 2 months into it, and that plan is no longer any good.
That's right. So no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right?
Exactly.
That's kind of what this feels like. Well, so you're right. We started off the year with a plan. We had a good plan. We'd been growing when I became the CEO of the Tech Council. The Tech Council was having some troubles. So in the first year, we got those under control. We got the organization on good footing. And fortunately for us, Troy, because we were so focused on cash management and resilience and the things that we needed to do to recover the organization, and when we went into the pandemic, we were very strong.
Yeah.
And so it put us in a good position. We haven't had to furlough any staff. We haven't had to make any reductions. In fact, we've grown through the pandemic,
Wow.
which has been great for us, great for our members, and I think great for the state and the economy as well. But we have had to pivot like everybody else. On March 18th, which happens to be my wedding anniversary, we had to send the staff home. Everybody had to go home, right? It was time to shut down. It was time to self-isolate. But we found that it was very easy for us to pivot to the virtual world. All the staff went home, took their laptops. We began having Zoom meetings, and that pivot was very easy for us. And then we have an amazing staff. Our staff went to work immediately, looking at and thinking about. So how do we maintain our mission? How do we maintain our charge in a virtual environment? And they started looking at different platforms and how to incorporate those platforms in our events. And we've been able to continue our networking. We've been able to continue our events, and in fact, our events have grown throughout this. Our signature events, our key events, will typically attract 500 to 600 people to an event. We held our industry awards celebration just a few weeks ago, and we live streamed it, and there were 2,000 people live streaming that event.
Wow. That's
by
impressive.
the time we got done. So our team has managed to find the right platforms, learn those platforms, incorporate them into our event planning and processing. So we've been able to continue to provide that value and support for our members throughout all of this.
What do you see? Well, you said already there's going to be elements of this that's going to stay. So what parts of that do you see potentially staying, as we move back to actually doing these interviews face to face? Which parts of the elements you think may have a stickiness to them?
Well, so for instance, doing these interviews face to face, I started our podcast, Capital M, 2 years ago, and it started out as an audio podcast, and it was recorded in an audio recording studio, and we managed to build up a really nice following. Our focus was on access to capital in the region, and now with the pandemic, we've switched to a live video podcast.
Oh wow!
And as we go forward, I think that we're not going to want to lose that video component. So part of it's going to be, we're not going to have to do it remotely like you and I are doing right now. We'll both be able to be in the same studio, but it still makes sense to do it as a video recording versus simply an audio recording, because then we can publish it both in just audio or video. And so those kinds of things are going to stick. For us at the Tech Council, I see our events will continue to incorporate an aspect of live streaming. So we're finding, another great example, our bioinnovation conference. We went international this year because by having this virtual component, the geographic boundaries all fall down. And so we had 100 participants from outside the country at our bioinnovation conference this year. And those kinds of things will stick. Those pieces will stick. So even when we come back and we can meet face to face, I can tell you our staff are already thinking, how do we live stream the talks? How do we live stream the events? How do we incorporate both a face to face meeting component and a virtual meeting component at the same time at a conference?
That's going to be cool. One of the things I talk about, I just mentioned it, this definition of normal is going to change for us, right? You and I both old enough to remember pre 9/11, you could get on a plane 5 minutes before the damn plane took off. But, post 9/11, you had to go through security, you had to take your shoes off and all of that. That was defined as normal. And so we're going to have a new normal that's going to emerge out of this. And I think you're right. How we leverage technologies will be germane. I'm convinced that the 5-day-a-week in the office model probably is not going to be the model for everybody. There are going to be people who will platoon, and there will be people who will find a way to work remotely. You've already seen that. I think I saw a report that the housing stock on the Eastern Shore is becoming depleted because people are recognizing they can work from anywhere. And so people are moving. There's a de-urbanization that's happening right now. That's happening. And so I think you're 100% right. Well, look, Marty, as we kind of come to a close, let's talk a little bit more about our relationship and more our organization's relationship and TEDCO and how we have this diversity initiative that I'm working on, but TEDCO is clearly a part of it as well. But other ways in which you see TEDCO and the Tech Council working together, particularly in helping Maryland recover from the pandemic.
Well, so first of all, TEDCO is a vital component of the innovation ecosystem in Maryland. There's no question about it. The investment dollars is part of it, but also the consulting work that you do, the mentoring work that you do, all of those support pieces. The legislation that was passed in the last general session that creates a technical support component for companies that seek SBIR grants. That's going to be critical going forward. And I've already positioned with Delegate Chi that there's an opportunity to expand on that program. If we can help companies access SBIR grants, well, why can't we help them prepare for the capital markets, which is going to be the next step beyond the SBIR grants.
Absolutely.
So that kind of support for the young companies is absolutely critical. And I see our relationship as certainly, very much in alignment with one another. So as the companies graduate from TEDCO, or as the companies as you invest in them and move them forward, well, we also have tools through our venture mentoring service that can help companies prepare for the capital markets, help companies prepare for commercialization. Yep. So it's very much a synergistic partnership, if you will, in how we can help these companies, help move them forward, help prepare these leadership teams for the things that they're going to face downstream. And
I think I've spoken to you about it, but just so our listeners can hear it as well. I mean, one of the things we're trying to reposition TEDCO around is put those consultants and services that you mentioned, that they're not just for TEDCO portfolio firms, but for anybody. I mean, our goal is to truly grow this thing that we keep calling the ecosystem and this innovation culture here in Maryland. And so it's not just about TEDCO, it's about networking and agreeing and collaborating with others. One of the definitions, might I say, of a well-functioning ecosystem is that the degrees of separation between any two people and any two organizations has been minimized. And so that's right. What we're supposed to be able to do is minimize those degrees of separation, or as I like to say, make orbits collide. How do you make orbits collide is what we want to do. Well, look, my friend, thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate you. Any closing comments or thoughts for our audience?
Troy, I just like to say one thing that I would like to include here is just quickly on access to capital. That's a big part of what you do. It's a big part of what we do for our members. And I just want to remind people that the capital markets are an international market, and the more that we can do to help our leadership teams prepare for those markets, the better off they're going to be, the better off the business ecosystem is going to be, the innovation ecosystem is going to be. And so I want to thank you for all the support and everything that you're doing in that world. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on this video podcast with you.
Well, appreciate you. And again, Marty, thank you, Marty, with the Maryland Tech Council, the true definition of a partner, a true definition of someone who truly cares about the innovation ecosystem here in Maryland. So I want to thank you for your service and your time today. Again, this is Troy Lamel Stovall with TEDCO, signing off with another TEDCO Talks. Thanks again, Marty.
Great. Thank you, Troy.